We all love effects pedals, but what we don't love is noise. And one source of noise can be power supplies. And I'm going to show you how noisy these power supplies can be. So if you're not careful with how you route your wiring, they can introduce noise into your signal chain. But I found a way to completely get rid of power supply noise, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So what I've got here is well, plugged into my amp here, end of a guitar cable. I just put it in a plastic bag so we're not touching the actual terminals, so they're actually isolated. And I've got a few wall warts here that just to tell you how noisy they are. So here's a generic wall wart, the number 1 wall wart here. Generic wall wart, anywhere near the tip, you can hear how noisy that is. So a lot of noise coming from the wall wart and from the wires as well. Number 2, electroharmonic wall wart. Similar, maybe a bit less. There's still a lot of noise coming through. A zoom wall wart. Ooh, that's extremely noisy. So what we might think is that, well, you know, yeah, the wall warts are rubbish. We'll get one of these isolated power supplies that are supposed to, you know, smooth the voltages out, and you know, they're supposed to not be noisy, right? So first of all, what I did, I got this power supply that came with it, and I thought, well, I'll check to see how noisy the actual power supply is. Oh, pretty noisy. So obviously, yeah, I'll plug it in here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's come on. Well, that noisy going in, it must be smooth coming out, but it's just as noisy. So I was thinking about this problem and how to solve it, and I came across these old power supplies, computer power supplies. This is a Dell power supplies, and I thought, well, I'll check how smooth the voltage is on this power supply, and lo and behold, it's absolutely quiet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a computer power supply. I'm going to use a voltage regulator to regulate it to 12 volts, and then I can power the isolated power supply with that, and that should be quiet. So that's the project. Let's see if it works. So here's the layout. 230 volts into the Dell power supply, 19.5 volts DC out through this cable, which I've got to somehow attach to this 12 volt regulator, 12 volts out into the isolated power supply, and 9 volts DC out into the pedal board. So I've butchered this cable, cut the end off, so I've got these wires that I can attach to the regulator input. There you go, I've just plugged it in. You've got 19.75 volts DC. So just checking the output of this 12 volt regulator, and we've got 12.44 volts, which should be okay. Well, let's see if this power's on then. Yep. Now for the moment of truth. Let's see if this one is noisy. No noise at all. How about that? So I've made some mounting brackets so I can mount this onto the board. So this is it. So you've got your computer power supply. Comes out about 20 volts, gets connected through this connector, which I've fastened to the board. Comes in to this 12 volt regulator. So it regulates the output to 12 volts, which then goes into the isolated power supply which converts the 12 volts into 9 volts for your pedals. So this is the completed pedal board with silent power supply on the back. And interestingly enough, you can use any computer power supply you find that's quiet, as long as you've got the right connector, because this regulator here will regulate anything from about 9 to 40 volts into 12 volts, which will supply your isolated power supply unit. And there we have it. Project done.